Hi, everybody. Welcome to 2ZQ Hot Takes, where we discuss issues both big and small. I am your host, the very handsome Tim Kirk, and today I'll be talking about self-identifying within and without of the LGBT community. I know I say this all the time about the LGBT community, mostly to be inclusive, but my observations and thoughts are generally about gay and bisexual men. I'm just not informed enough to say anything definitive about women's sexual identities or trans people's identities at all. So, with that, when you have that neighbor who thinks they can cook and everything just smells awful and the stink seeps into your place, it's kind of gross. Learn how to cook someplace else. It's sort of like comb-overs. It's really obvious, but I'm not going to be the one. I'll wait for someone who has had a few too many cocktails to blurt it out. It reminds me of the crazy neighbor equation. If you live in a walk-up, you have a crazy neighbor. If you do not have a crazy neighbor, you are the crazy neighbor. And it is unlikely that in conversation, your other neighbors are going to tell you that, as far as they're concerned, you are the crazy neighbor. You just don't want to confront the issue or cause any controversy when all you have to do is keep your mouth shut. So what does that have to do with self-identifying in the gay community? Some people don't, when it is very obvious that they should. For their own peace of mind, at the very least. Who needs that fear, paranoia, stress? Especially when it is visible to others. What is it doing to you inside? Jeez. And when it comes to self-identifying, I have been in the presence of someone, an individual, who suddenly said,
I'm a top. I want to shoot pool. I want to go to the spike. I'm a top.
Hey, that's how you identify yourself. You take on the dominant active role in a sexual relationship with sexual activity. You might be met with some skepticism, but that's not for me to say. I just think that spontaneously announcing that you're a top while sounding like Mickey Mouse is funny. That's not to say that everybody with a high voice is automatically a bottom. Far from it. I have bisexual friends who are open and honest about their sexuality, in sexual relationships with members of the opposite sex, and faithful to boot. Cheers to you. Some bisexuals, however, sometimes confuse me with their straight acting appearances. Only some. Not all bisexual men are straight acting. And I mean, it can be really hot to make out with a bisexual guy who is butch as all get out, or not, because of preconceived notions of whatever turns you on. But the thought of deception to a woman who might not be aware of your identity, or if she actually is aware, or as granular as a specific activity that day and hour when you're together, to whatever degree that entails, is what confuses me. In the 70s and 80s, hell, I even think in the 90s, through right now, many closeted men who had heterosexual cover relationships spent time in bathhouses and cruising areas and the like, and it was part and parcel of life. Today, it is substantially different in the community, to me anyway, and I am not too keen on furthering any deception to a life partner or of the opposite sex. I just know people who do this. It seems unfair and possibly cruel to keep your partner in the dark about your sex life, especially if they are not aware of your identity. This is where I get into weirdness with bisexual men, because I sometimes do not know how to mentally sort the incongruities they present, whether they are aware of them or not. However, this is my issue, not theirs. Again, this is not all bisexual men. If you are closeted and single, come out already. What the hell are you waiting for? If you are married and are deceiving your spouse, this is where I have an issue. You are, for all intents and purposes, a practicing bisexual. Although you are really homosexual, and because of your personal situation or local social conventions and religious practices and beliefs, you have always lived your life this way. I can understand that. If you are not open and honest about it, it can cause tremendous problems in a marriage. I know this because of anecdotal experiences with men who have come out and detailed their experiences to their wives who were not thrilled about it. One man I know had an extremely hostile reaction from his wife when he told her, and she felt a horrible betrayal of their relationship and her perceptions of their life together and what she thought would be a lifelong commitment. He obviously felt otherwise, but it stung her very badly, especially when your fidelity and integrity comes into question. What else are you not being honest about? I say this as a gay man who has had the luxury of coming out and receiving tremendous amount of support, and I live in a big city with a large LGBT population, And people, for the most part, are fine with the LGBT community. No judgment on my part. But I wonder if it gives one pause to consider the betrayal of trust if you are engaged in deceit and are found out. I would hate to be responsible for breaching that seal in any way. I wouldn't want to be complicit or abet anybody doing that. That is, if you are closeted, and I have had my share of experiences with closeted guys. A lot of them go to gay venues and get caught up in the atmosphere and let it all hang out, mistaking other men's nonchalance as approval for their attempted duplicity, as if everybody thinks that just getting off with another guy or guys is the entire purpose of being gay. The assumptions being made are kind of insulting to out gay men, if I may say so myself. We don't just exist to satisfy your desires when they're compelling you to do so. I was visiting my parents when they lived in Florida and was walking on the beach one day when I met a man who appeared to me to be very obviously gay. We chatted and he warned me about alligators in the woods between the surf and the road on the other side of the beach. Okay. We had a pleasant chat and said goodbye. Later, I went out to dinner with my parents, and we happened to be at the next table of this guy who was with his parents. He did his level best to act like there was a brick wall between the tables, and I overheard him talking to his parents, and he was still putting on the charade of being straight, and that was not exactly convincing either. But hey, if you want to take a second-rate status in your own life, that's for you to determine. I was just trying to say hi, and I doubt you folks really thought you were straight either. Anyway, this is the flimsy, superficial aspect of self-identifying because, as we do know, there's very many types that gay men like to describe or associate themselves with. Everything from bears to otters to leather queens to show queens to drama queens to butch femmes, and the list goes on. I personally think that once you do come out and identify, the weight of the world comes off your shoulders and you start life anew. That is when you find yourself, and that is one of the vital things that makes life worth living. Anyway, thanks for listening. See you next time, and as the kiddies say, peace out.